everyone, in this episode I have decided I'm going to give it a try to make Chinese keto. I have picked a Chinese beef recipe that I'm going to convert to keto and see how it goes. So let's go on this journey together and see if we can make it work, because that is one thing I am missing at the moment, is a good Chinese dish. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is marinate for the beef. That's the first step. The other step that we need to do is make our hoisin sauce from scratch, because that typically is where the issues come from with Chinese. So it's quite sugary normally. And so if we make that from scratch, we can actually use xylitol to replace, and miso as well, miso paste, to replace that the sugar content that's normally in the hoisin sauce. So okay, so let's get started in making our marinade. We need tamari and garlic. That's all we need for the marinade component of this dish. So I have a tablespoon and a whisk, and I'm just going to pop in a bowl 4 tablespoons of the tamari soy sauce. So it's 1 and a bit. It's 2, 3, 4. We're going to do 2 cloves of garlic. So for me, that's 2 just really good squirts. You can mince up your own natural fresh garlic if you prefer. And we'll just give that a whisk through. And break that garlic all up as best we can. Set that aside. Now I have my trusty Pyrex container, and we have a kilo of grass-fed beef. That into our container. Okay, so now we've got the beef in the container. We'll just put our marinade over the top. And just use some tongs to mix that through as best you can. And then we'll pop it in the fridge to marinate while we get on with the rest of the meal. So that's fairly well covered with our sauce. Just pop on the lid. And you'll see that we now have our marinated meat all nice and tightly packed away, so I'll just pop that in the fridge. Okay, we are now ready to cook our beef, so that's the next step. Just turn on the cooktop, just so we can get our pan heated up. We'll be using the olive oil. Just want to get enough in there to shallow fry our beef. And we just want half of the beef mixture onto our plate, which we will then cover with half of the almond flour. That's about half the beef. Just sprinkle over half of the almond flour. Just using the almond flour like you would if you were using corn flour. Just sprinkle on some salt and pepper. Let it toss around. Of the flour. Okay, now when that's nicely covered, as it is, we will pop that in the pan using a nice hot pan. Get the next batch ready. We've just got a plate here to put our cooked beef on once it's cooked. Okay, so that's the first batch cooked. Just add a little more oil. And then the rest of this beef. So we'll just let that now cook away. Okay, we now have a clean pan and the meat is sitting aside whilst we make the sauce. Before I get that going, I'm just going to get our cauli rice ready. So I'm just going to pop the cooktop on. We have our pan and we just have enough cauliflower to steam for 2 people. Just pop that, break that up and pop it in the steamer. And we'll just keep an eye on that whilst we start making our sauce. Okay, with our sauce, we're just going to put straight into the pan half a cup of soy sauce, 1/4 cup of cooking sake, 1/4 cup of white vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of our homemade hoisin sauce. Okay, just going to give that a stir around. we want to bring that up to the boil so we can get it simmering. Okay, so that's now coming up to the boil. Just want to cook this for a couple of minutes. I'm going to bring that down now to a simmer. We want to add in our chili flakes, which is a teaspoon. Cook that off. And then we want to add in our sweetener, which for me is xylitol, and we just want to melt that through. So I'm going to continue to stir while that simmers. And that's 1/3 of a cup. So we just want to cook that off now for a couple of minutes. Make sure all of that sugar dissolves. Sorry, xylitol, sweetener. Okay, so that looks good. With that, I'm now going to add the beef in. Now the goal is to mix all that sauce over, cover all of the beef, and then we'll leave it to sit to simmer so we can thicken up the sauce. Okay, so we're just going to now leave that beef to simmer just for a few minutes. Okay, our sauce is thickening nicely on our beef. Keep that going for a touch longer, and I'll just check how our cauliflower's going. So that's still firm. That needs to go probably for another 10 minutes. Okay, our meat is now done and looks very yummy, and so now I just need to prepare the cauli rice. So the cauliflower is now steamed, and I'm just going to pop that into my food processor. So what I'll also put in here is 20 grams of butter and some salt and pepper. And give that a go in the food processor. So we want it for a rice consistency, so I didn't process it for too long, otherwise it would end up being quite mushy. And this is what we have. So you'll see it's got a rice-like texture. So all that's left to do now is to plate up. I've just got my plate. Put in the bed of cauli rice. Pop in some of this beautiful beef. The sauce. We'll top that with some spring onions and finally sprinkle it sesame seeds. And there we have it, our beautiful crispy beef with cauli rice, topped with sesame and spring onions.